He made a bet, she made history. Battle of the Sexes, directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris. And it is starring Emma Stone and Steve Carell. Before I go any further, I just want to say there will not be any plot spoilers in this review, although it is based on a true story, so the spoilers are already out there. For those of you not familiar with this story, way back in 1973, there was a very famous tennis match between Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. Bobby Riggs was an old retired tennis player, and Billie Jean King was one of, if not the best, female tennis player at that time. And this film shows the events leading up towards that very famous tennis match. The first thing I want to say right off the bat is that Emma Stone and Steve Carell are fantastic in their respective roles as Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. And this film is really a showcase for their acting talents, which, if you are familiar with them at all, know that they are already great at what they do. Emma Stone most recently won an Oscar for her portrayal in La La Land from last year, and Steve Carell has been nominated for an Oscar in the past for his lead role in Foxcatcher. And the positive aspects don't end at the actors. The film is dealing with a lot of very parallel themes to our modern times, especially when it goes into the misogyny that existed not only within the world of sports at the time, but also within just society in general. Unfortunately, it's something that we are still dealing with today. It shows how the potential of women is great, as well as the limitations because of the society in which we live in, and also shows that in the future, hopefully things will get better. It's also good when we're dealing with the characters of Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. Both of these characters are on a journey separately that happen to intertwine with one another in the climax of this film. They're both kind of soul-searching. They're both kind of looking for a kind of abstract meaning in their lives. Billie Jean King is at somewhat of a crossroads in her life when it comes to her personal sexual identity. And we also see that Bobby Riggs is dealing with a lot of personal issues in the sense that he has a gambling problem as well as an ego problem. He is someone who depicts a very demonstrative ego, especially when it comes to his gambling and his personas and stuff like that. And I find myself thinking that he is hiding a lot of internal pain and a lot of internal frustrations for him personally, because he is no longer a professional tennis player. His playing days professionally are behind him, and he really doesn't know what else to do with his life. Unfortunately for me, the film doesn't deal with a lot of these themes in great depth. They are touched upon, they are shown, but they only deal with them on a very surface level, and it pained me to watch that because this film had so much more to give in it than was depicted on screen. And don't get me wrong, I did like this film a lot. This film also let me down in a couple of other ways as well. Immediately when this film begins, we are given almost no context to the world in which this film is set. 1973 is much different than now. You almost need kind of a quick run history lesson to the political and societal climate of the time, especially if we're dealing with the sports world as well as society. We're not really given that. We are just thrust right into it, and there are certain references to things that if you are not aware of the times, you will not understand, and it really bothered me at how kind of underdeveloped the screenplay was in that perspective. A few lines here and there, even a prologue of just writing on the screen would have been nice, but we are just not giving that at all. There's no context for the relationship between a lot of the people, because there are moments of this film that certain characters interact with one another, especially Bobby Riggs interacting with Billie Jean King when he first has this idea for this match, and they seem to know who each other are, and I want want to know, why do they know who each other are? Who is Bobby Riggs? What is his background? How is he perceived in the world? We're not given a lot of that, so it took me out of the film. I am somewhat disappointed for this film when it came to plot structure and story structure. I thought was all over the place. So with all that being said, I'm going to give this film a 3.4 out of 5 stars. The characters are great, the acting is great, the story, the message behind this film is fantastic, and it is very important, especially for modern times, a kind of a mirror as to where we are now, as to where we were then, but this film could have been much better. That has been my review of Battle of the Sexes. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.